Welcome back to Working with Feeling. I cannot wait to kick off this new season with today's guest, Rachel Hamlin. Rachel helps founders and execs stop burnout and create balance. She is a product leader turned executive coach and somatic healer, and has worked with companies ranging from Fortune 500s to an early stage Ethereum startup in London, Berlin, New York. So she is very well versed with the chronic stress that is an existential threat to any business. Rachel uses a neuroscience-backed approach to help leaders gain control of their time and energy, keep focus, and future-proof their career or business. What I personally love so much is that she approaches things in a way that I will describe to you as body mindset. So it's not just shifting your head and your thoughts about what's happening in order to somehow magically attain control, but she helps her clients develop the state, the way of being that's going to allow them to get out of that cycle of chronic stress. You may notice that Rachel and I have a fair amount of overlap in terms of how we approach our work and the type of work we do. That will, of course, come through in this conversation, but I hope we've kept it to a level such that you don't just feel like it's two nerds nerding out about their favorite topics, but you actually get value from the way in which Rachel can tease out what's real, what actually leads to sustained change, what actually leads to growth versus all the hype in the personal development and growth space. This podcast is made for you, so please reach out to me with feedback. And if you're gaining value from it, subscribe, leave a rating. It helps us reach more people who can benefit from the work we're all doing together here. Enjoy this conversation with Rachel Hamlin. This work is so hard to understand before you actually experience it. And this is something I hear from client after client is like, I sensed that there was something in this for me. I didn't totally understand what it was going to be. Now that I understand it, I'm like, this is so different from anything that I've done before. It's helping me in these new ways. But I'm trying to like explain to this other co-founder I know what this is, how this can benefit you. And I still can't do it, even though I can tell them how I'm benefiting, but I can't describe what the work is.
Yeah, totally. And there's so many different flavors to somatic work too, which I think can make it a little bit complicated. Like I was working with a healer for a long time whose work was closest to, I suppose, like somatic experiencing, but he was just also like a ninja. He was so incredibly adept at reading energy and tracking my system and understanding intuitively what was going on in me, that he could perceive feelings that I was having that I couldn't even fully perceive. Right? So there's like such subtlety to it, such nuance. Like sometimes there's just no words for what a good somatic practitioner can do.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is where there's a combination. There's, of course, science behind it, but there's a lot of art to it that is really challenging to describe because it's so, well, first of all, we're working with the felt sense, which doesn't communicate in words. Yeah. And that's a big part of the shift for many of us is this is not about making sense of everything that's happening inside of me. It's learning to experience what's happening more fully.
Totally. And I always try to make it useful, right? I'm like, well, and then as we do that, it's like, not only do you come more alive and become more present to the moment, but it also just liberates energy. It teaches you something. It gives you greater freedom and greater capacity to work against your ingrained patterns that are in some ways the result of you being entrenched and doubling down on those things and not feeling them instead, right? You're repressing your experience. So, it's totally mystical in some ways too. I think it's like, we're not just working with the soma and the body. I think, we're obviously working with the emotional body, the felt sense, the emotional body, and like the spiritual body, something that is like other and, an essence of a person, right? Or an energy body that we can't see. And I don't think science has words for.
Can we talk about this? Because this is you share about this on, or you at least include this lens when you're sharing on LinkedIn, which I think is really, really cool because first of all, my experience of what you share is that you do it in a way where you're not trying to hide that this is part of your work. You're actually embracing that this is part of the work, and this is a core reason people who are working with you have experienced the benefits that they do. And I'm curious about this in part because I've of course experienced that mystical side of this work, and it can be something that I'm hesitant to talk about,
Uh-huh.
honestly. And also because my sense is that people are more maybe open-minded, are more ready to entertain the fact that there might be a way of perceiving relating to the world that they haven't considered.
Mm.
So what has
Yeah.
been your experience?
Totally true. I mean, I think we're all aware that that's trending, right? Like new age spirituality and, um, I mean, even like just astrology has become mega trendy, at least in my corner of the internet. Like anything that kind of connects us to some other realm, right? Other dimension of existence. And in my last few intake forms, I do have a question that asks my client, what is your spiritual orientation? Do you practice a religion? Do you believe in anything, right? And the last few people who've come in have said yes. And they were not people that I was expecting to say yes, right? And they're not people who necessarily have a way of giving language to their beliefs, but they're like, yeah, I believe there's something greater than me. And I think that really anytime a person expresses a desire to live their purpose, they are consciously or otherwise expressing a desire for spiritual connection. Because purpose is like, it if what if not like a mystical thing? Like you can't say for sure at the end of your life, like, I passed the test, I lived my purpose. Like the answer was revealed. You know, there's no one who's ever going to be able to reveal that for you. It's like a felt sense. And to me, it's like ultimately a sense of connection that you're looking for in living your purpose. You're looking for a connection to something greater. And you might not be, but you're looking for a sense of connection. And that's the common ground with people who do have a spiritual connection, who connect to the universe, who connect to energy, who connect to source, right? It's all about the essence of feeling connected and feeling like your teeny little human experience is part of some great, meaningful cosmic whole and is bigger than you.
Yeah. Yeah. Whether you and your body are can act as this paintbrush for whatever it is that wants to come through, whether you want to relate to your body, your life, your mind as an expression of that art that's being painted onto the canvas, however we choose to experience it and relate to it, there's this, and this is one of the things I appreciate and that drew me to somatics to the extent that it did, is because you brought up new age spirituality, and there's this idea of, oh, in order to connect with that purpose, you have to transcend your humanity. You have to go
Ooh.
beyond this human existence. And what we're exploring in somatics is actually more so, how can I come more into this, more deeply present with this human experience, and in so doing be deeply connected with my purpose, with the art that wants to come through me and be expressed.
I mean, in so many ways, like this now moment and my capacity to embrace it is my purpose. Just to be fully alive. I don't know how you express. I'd actually really love to hear, Oren, if you have a means of expressing what your purpose is, because the answer that I give if someone actually asks me these days is to embody love. And that feels so true and so achievable in any single moment, especially through somatic experiencing and somatic work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, if I were to answer that now, I'd probably use terminology that to me is a representation of what love means to me, which is evolutionary change,
Ooh,
which is
ooh,
expansion, which is growing and evolving, and
totally.
effectively recognizing that change is a constant. one of the reasons why we need more people who are experiencing somatics and connecting more with their body is because we need to be able to rest into the reality that everything is changing. There is no controlling our circumstances such that we're able to ensure that what we want to be the outcome is going to be the outcome. There is no such thing as certainty. And being able to relax into the uncertainty, being able to explore, how do I experience this changing, basically this cyclical nature of being a human being, and getting to know that more, maybe living life in a way that's more connected to the ups and downs and ins and outs of being a human being. Maybe then I can connect more with my purpose, with whatever it is that is my contribution to evolutionary change, to supporting life and the expansion of life.
Yeah, totally. Well, I love because this idea about evolutionary change, you're including, right, your own evolution in that, right? And then your ability to also contribute to evolution in your community or your industry or your organization, whatever it is, I'm sure follows. But, you know, your ability to get with the present moment is what allows you to evolve. And if you are in a place of stress and tension and resistance, you're fighting the present moment, right? You're not able to open yourself to whatever is actually available for you, including whatever insight might want to come through. If you were able to like fully relax and look at things from the sort of expanded consciousness that is available in a settled and relaxed nervous system. So I wanted to make another point about that, but I kind of got derailed. And if that sparks anything for you, I'll pause.
Well, the interesting thing about it to me is that I think those of us who are so intent on living a life of purpose, we may encounter things like, okay, here's a framework. Here's how you write down all these different things about your life and your values and who you are and how you connect with your purpose. And what you're
Yeah.
saying is something that is, to me, so essential to start with, which is you can write down all these beautiful things that are truly aligned with who you are and reflective of who you are. And your ability to step into the world with those qualities is going to be limited if the body mind is full of tension,
Yes.
full of stress.
Yes.
And
Yes.
that,
Because purpose is also a felt sense. Like you said, you could write down the most beautiful words about what your purpose is. But if your body mind isn't syncing with that and you aren't able to experience the feeling of having a contribution or the feeling of connection to whatever it is you're doing because you are in a place of tension, then you'll never feel purposeful. It doesn't matter what job you're in.
yeah, we end up in this mode of chasing, which is effectively autopilot, where really we're living in reactivity. Because when we are holding on to stress and tension, we can't, to your point, be present to what's actually in front of me. What is actually the need of this moment?
Yeah.
And we have no choice but to be reacting based upon whatever learned patterns we've accrued over our lifetime.
Yeah. And you might also be in a pattern where you set a goal, right? And you're like, this is the external thing I'm going to do. And I'm committing to that goal. But for whatever reason, you aren't able to actually advance towards the goal, right? In the way that you know that you should. And this is where I'm thinking like traditional talk coaching comes to mind, right? Because I don't think that, speaking of evolutionary change again, I don't think that traditional talk coaching is actually all that conducive to change. And the reason that I feel that way is because a lot of times it's about setting a goal and saying, okay, what's the next action you want to take towards that goal? Easy enough, right? And then next week we'll check in and make sure that you did the next action, right? We'll hold you accountable. Pretty simple, like rinse, wash, repeat process. But I have heard so many people come into discovery calls with me and say, yeah, I've had a coach before and I don't know, I didn't really get a lot out of it, or I never really did my homework. And there's this kind of sheepishness around it. But often what I find the reason is someone hasn't done their homework or succeeded in a coaching engagement like that is because simply externalizing a goal and saying, okay, I'm going to do the thing I know I need to do in order to do it, doesn't account for the internal emotional resistance, whether it's stress or tension. And I think all emotional resistance, whether it's a bigger emotion like fear or anger or shame or something, can be reduced down to stress in the nervous system, right? To be like really simplistic about it. But that underlying stress and tension isn't being accounted for or resolved. And so that sabotages the person's efforts to go out and do what they need to do. And they end up spinning their wheels and thinking, why can't I change? What's wrong with me?
And there's an important distinction here that we can make when you're speaking to resolving that emotion. And you can correct me here, of course, if you have a different perspective. But what is different about the type of work we're speaking to is we're not talking about solving where an emotion came from, why we're experiencing it, what it says about what we should or should not be doing. What we are talking about when we say resolving that emotional state is allowing that emotional state to be first and learning how to more deeply experience the felt sense, to deeply experience what it means at the layer of sensation to feel emotion, so that your whole body and mind can be sharing information with you, so that we can be connected to the fullness of the present moment, as opposed to one little sliver that is coming in through our intellectual understanding and analytical ability.
Totally. And the mind loves to analyze emotions, analyze why I'm feeling this way, analyze if I'm able to feel. Let's say that much. Like, at least when I'm guiding a client through a process, right? And I'm encouraging the client to get into their feeling state. It can be so challenging for me as a practitioner, or it is a challenge for me as a practitioner, to keep the client in the sensation, because their temptation is to pop up and start explaining it and start telling the story about it and start saying, well, but then they said this, and now I think I maybe should do this. And there's such a temptation to intellectualize and go back up to the mind to problem solve. And in doing that, you are actually evading the very thing you need to be facing, which is usually below the neck in the world of sensation, in the world of the body. And that's, I mean, this is, by the way, like, it's called somatic healing or somatic work, because it's the soma, the body. It's the body. It's not the brain. It's the body, and they're connected, but it's in the body. And it's literally a sensation, like experiencing tingles or experiencing heat or experiencing like a queasy stomach. That's like how emotion presents. But it's not easy. People don't usually have sensitivity to their emotions if they've been in the corporate world, or if they've grown up in the Western world in the school system, probably to begin with. So it's like actually something that you really do need to train for and practice and gain subtlety in.
I love to talk more about and to clarify why. Like, why is this? Let's say, Rachel, what you're talking about here is legitimately possible, for starters, to feel, to be aware of that level of experience all the time and just be able to still function. Let's say that's possible. And my life is going to look different in some way. What are going to be some of those differences that I experience as I embark upon this type of work?
Mm-hmm. You're going to feel better. You're going to have the thing that everybody wants and the reason that everybody sets any goal ever, right? Like to get a higher salary or to close their next round or whatever, they're going to feel the way they want to feel. More confident, more relaxed, more present, more secure, more at ease. That's what's possible when you clear out what's in the way of you feeling that way. My belief is that well-being is our natural state, and anything that represents stress or tension in the system, I mean, yes, it's a natural function of a healthy nervous system, and it's something that you can remove to reveal the truth of your experience, which is inherently peaceful and relaxed. And if you're inherently peaceful and relaxed, I mean, it's pretty easy to see the compound effects that can have in your life and your leadership, right? Just as one example, like, let's say that you have to lead a high pressure meeting and there's a lot of important stakeholders in that meeting, and you tend to get a little imposter syndrome before something like that, and you feel anxious just getting on the call. Well, if you have taken that particular stressor through a piece of somatic alchemy or somatic work with your healer, with yourself, you are going to be capable of sitting down in front of your computer and feeling your resting heart rate be at like a normal BPM. And your palms aren't going to be sweating. And you're going to speak slower than you do when you get nervous and excited. And when someone raises their hand to ask a question in the middle of your presentation, you're not going to go into a shame spiral in your head thinking, oh no, I said the wrong thing. They're not believing me. I have to defend myself. You're not going to get nervous, agitated, and defensive in response. You're just going to carry on with your presentation. Like, that's one small example of how resting into a calm and relaxed nervous system and a state of well-being can support you as you operate in your day-to-day. I'd love to hear one of your examples too, Oren, if you have something.
Yeah, and I want to reinforce the headline there, which is you just feel better.
It's all we want anyway. It's what everything is for.
You're more connected. Like, you feel more connected to yourself. So you feel more connected to other people. You feel more connected to whatever's happening in front of you. And this is an experience that exceedingly few of us have day to day. I've learned in doing this work. And of course, like, I've been there. That used to be my reality as well. I'm not saying I'm like somebody who's like 100% in the present moment, nor do I believe that to be possible, at least for me in this lifetime. But I do believe that there is something that we've strayed so far away from, which is this natural, to your point, way of being where we're here. We're here with our nervous system, with our full experience that has all kinds of charges and challenges and joys and frustrations. And it's this maybe paradoxical thing for many of us where it's like, oh, actually, by allowing myself to experience that more, it has less control over me.
Yeah. I think it can be a little bit scary sometimes for people that maybe they're opening Pandora's box. And once they start feeling, they'll never stop, right? They'll get stuck in it or go into a total depression or a funk. And that's so not true. Emotions actually move through the system so quickly, especially if you're facilitating with a tool. I mean, there's different ways of doing this. You could simply just be there and open yourself to feel it if you have that level of access, and relax and breathe into it. Sometimes I give the analogy of like giving birth. Like, it really is the most natural thing if you can just kind of like relax and breathe and get out of the way and imagine making yourself more spacious so that this emotion can kind of move its way through your system. But they process actually relatively quickly. And what usually happens is, even if you come in and let's say you start angry, because this is a classic pattern, right? You start angry and then we work through some of the anger, which is a very heightened emotion. And all of a sudden the person like dives into this like deep sadness, and there turns out to be this deep sadness or grief underneath the anger. And they sit down there for a few moments and it's so heavy and it's so dense and you feel like you're at rock bottom. But then we keep working with it and we keep working with it, and suddenly they're on the up again. And it can almost become humorous and light and playful. And the thing that you were just like so furious about is now like a joke to you. And there could be nothing more liberating or empowering than to be able to honestly have a laugh at something that had such hold over you just a few minutes ago. Like that is a radically freeing and joyful feeling. And as you can imagine, then gives you energy to bring into like the rest of your day, the next thing you do.
Yeah. Well, this goes back to this idea of when we allow ourselves, I like to refer to it as digesting our experience, digesting our emotions. When we allow ourselves to fully digest this stuff that is natural to being a human being, energy does flow more easily. We're able to tap into, this is why I speak to creativity so frequently. Like how is creativity possibly connected to the body? We're told use that big brain to be creative. And what we have to come back to is the fact that blood flows through your body, electric signals flow through your body, energy has to move through your whole body. We just cannot function in the world. We definitely can't create real change that is in any way grounded with what's needed in the world just from our head. We are
Yeah.
connected to the ground through our body. And
Yeah.
when we've all had that experience of going on a hike or jumping into the ocean or having these experiences where we suddenly feel this rush of sensation through the body, and we could have entered into that park or entered onto that beach feeling kind of sluggish, feeling like we couldn't quite wake up. And then suddenly it's just all this energy is moving.
Doesn't that sometimes give you your best ideas? Like for me, I always get my best ideas when I'm in a heightened state and I'm kind of like, wee, for some reason.
When we're not in analysis mode where we could just
Yeah.
connect with what's actually happening here and also give ourselves an opportunity, give our brain an opportunity to
Mm.
have a little break,
Yeah.
to make the connections that it needs to make there in the background while our hands are busy doing something else or our legs are busy
Mm.
doing something else.
Yeah. Yeah. Completely. Completely agreed. Um, where to go from here? There was something else that struck me in what you just said. Point about creativity, point about this present moment, point about, oh, the environment. I was thinking about the environment that you're in when you spoke about jumping in a lake. We're talking a lot about somatic practices and somatic work without actually saying what that is necessarily. A great place to begin for anybody, especially anybody who's at a laptop or a screen all day long, is to legitimately just immerse yourself in a sensory environment where you can feel tactile sensations on your feet, your hands, your body. So, like getting into nature is one of the first places that I would recommend a person begins if they want to begin to sensitize enough to be able to feel and process and use this tool of somatic alchemy, because it's a lot harder to ignore your senses when there's sensations coming from the outside, right? Like grass on your feet or the feeling of a cool lake on your skin, right?
Yeah, and something to keep in mind when beginning to employ some of these different practices in order to connect more with the body and more with sensation is that just like we've spent, many of us, decades learning not to feel this stuff, it can take some time to relearn
Mm,
to connect with these sensations. So it may not be some revolutionary experience that we have the first time we practice these things. And remembering that part of what we're doing is reconnecting with our sensation, reconnecting with our body at the speed of the nervous system. So
mhm,
definitely does not have to take decades, but we do, and this is why we speak to practices in somatic work, we do have to develop some form of consistency of teaching our body how to come back to sensation. And a
mhm,
big part of that, which tends to be one of the most challenging pieces of this for clients of mine, and I'm sure other clients you're working with who are leaders, is slowing it all down, allowing the space that's required in order for the nervous system to enter into a parasympathetic state, rest
Yeah.
and digest. And this is one of the ways that if we are interested in leading, in modeling a new way of being, in changing the culture of work, in impacting the lives of the people we work with, one of the core ways we do that is by showing up in a different state.
Yeah.
When the norm is to show up in what is effectively survival mode, in a state of hypervigilance, if we can be a model of how to be in a state that is more grounded, that in and of itself can cause an incredible ripple effect of change. But it starts with practicing what that actually means in our own body.
It's contagious. I mean, that is such good leadership, in my opinion, to be able to show up calm and relaxed for your team, because it transmits calm and relaxed, and the rest of the team will pick up on that. Right? Like, that's the feedback that I get from my clients, is as they become more calm and steady, their team becomes more calm and steady. Right? As they become more calm and steady, they also probably are more predictable in their actions, right? And easier to work for. And there's minutia into how that changes their leadership. But the energy itself is actually powerfully contagious and can have a huge impact on the people around you. So if you really want to enhance your team's performance, this is a place to consider investing in and practicing.
I think that brings up one of the things that can be beneficial to address head on, which is whether we have acknowledged it directly or not. Most, if not all of us, coming up through the corporate setting have learned that a sense of urgency is what makes you successful. You have got to keep pushing. We've got that. I mean, hopefully we're beyond at this point the whole hustle culture thing, but it is so deeply ingrained, not only in our heads, but really in our bodies, that it is unsafe, as far as we've learned, to slow it down, to relax, to calm down. And I can tell you from personal experience, having been pulled aside at certain moments in my career and told, you don't seem like you really have a sense of urgency around this, and that concerns me because I wasn't flipping my shit about what was going on. And that is really threatening when we learn that intense urgency and vigilance equals being okay and having success.
Yeah, that's a cultural piece that just needs to change. Honestly, I understand that the pace of work is just borderline impossible to keep up with. And I think that should be our cue that we shouldn't try. Not as hard as we do, right? Like, it's completely unrealistic to expect yourself to be responsive and available to the degree that the work would have you be responsive and available if you were going to meet even 90% of the demand, right? There's more work available at any given time that you can ever possibly do. And you just have to learn to be able to sit in that discomfort. And that often does mean choosing who, because I find that that is the greatest stress trigger for those that I work with, is the people that they're going to disappoint in deferring on whatever item or neglecting whatever email. It's usually about the person on the other end rather than the task itself. It does mean that you're going to have to choose who you're going to, in your mind, let down or offend or whatever it is. And that particular point of discomfort, of guilt, of shame, of even just urgency and the constant like phantom, like, I got to do more, I can't rest, I don't know what I even need to do, I just know I need to be doing something. Those are sensations that you can absolutely take through somatic practices. And I have helped a number of clients to gently and systematically disentangle from, so that they can show up and work their to-do list with a healthy internal clock, instead of one that's like, we're already 14 tasks behind and it's 9:01 a.m. right?
Oh, I know it well. I've been on my own long personal journey of developing a new way of relating to work and to all that needs to be done. and what it means to move through your work in the world in a way that is really more conducive to being on purpose rather than just being in this frenetic state of survival.
Yeah, that's right. If you want to be on purpose, you know that you can't just be doing the next urgent task. You know that.
Yeah. So I think there are a few places we can go from here, but as I think about the perspective of somebody listening, and as I think about what clients have shared with me who have been in the early stages of this work and have started to experience some of the benefits, they'll say things like, I'm recognizing that I don't have to show up to every meeting with this low grade anxiety. I'm realizing that I had taken this way of showing up for granted or that way of showing up that is just so normalized. And that if I'm going to set the stage for a different culture, a different way of working together, if I really want to just be able to be more present with the people I care about who I work with, as well as with the people in my personal life, that this idea that we're talking about here of deepening this connection to the body and to the felt sense, this is how I'm going to do it. This is how I'm going to reconnect to who I really am, that I've piled on so many of these layers of stress onto. And part of that process is going to be making some pretty substantial changes in my life and the way that it's structured, in the boundaries that I have with people I work with and people I live with. And this is often a sticking point for many of us who have learned, those of us who have been high performing for a long period of time, who are used to working really hard for the pat on the back, is we're going to probably inconvenience people by necessitating that they shift the way that they're relating to us in response to the way we change the way we're showing up. And so I'd love to just hear what comes up for you around that, and maybe any examples or ways in which people can entertain that possibility as even being something that they can move through and not totally blow up their lives.
I just want to say that, like, in the many dozens of instances that I've coached people through, boundary setting or saying no, turning down opportunities, it has never once been as big a deal as they thought it would be. In fact, I don't think it's ever been a problem at all in the history. I think I maybe had one client who I would say they were in a toxic work environment. And so that was a no-win situation. But in any other, relatively healthy dynamic, it's not going to be what you think it is. In fact, the person might not even be disappointed at all. But even if they are, usually what happens when we say no, or we protect our time, or we exercise discernment in where we're putting our focus, it just breeds respect. It just breeds respect. And it can be done in a way that is respectful to the other person. But your initial instinct, if you struggle with this, is going to be to avoid doing it altogether until you work with that guilt, shame, fear, anticipation, usually in some kind of somatic practice, right? That's the crucial piece to being able to do this effectively, is to clear the tension, clear the dysregulation, come into a grounded place yourself, and then set the boundary, and then have the conversation, and then write the email letting that person know you're not available at this time for that opportunity. There you are.
I'm just taking a moment here to get back into the client's shoes.
Hmm.
who's taking these steps and is communicating these things and thinking about where could be a good place to go to support people who might not feel like this is attainable for them.
Mm,
I think.
yeah. I always like to um, I always like to teach my favorite technique, one of my favorite body-based techniques, which is the emotional freedom technique,
Mhm.
tapping. It's a tool that is so easily applied um, in any context by any person. And there's so many great resources available with tapping that you could easily take yourself through a quick little tapping sequence. And even if it had nothing to do with like the particular feeling that you're feeling, like shame or guilt or whatever it is, you would come into a state of greater resourcefulness and resilience and be able um, to show up differently, right? So like these techniques don't have to be complicated. And tapping is one of my favorites because it also engages the mind. There's like an element of speaking to the problem and getting to like talk it out that I find can be very accessible for someone who's not super deep in this work.
Yeah, I like that as an entry point. I like that especially because it's so accessible for, let's say, somebody isn't ready to start working with a coach of their own right now or joining a program. This is their tapping apps, their instructional videos online. Anywhere in particular that you would steer
Yeah.
someone toward?
Yeah, I would say the Tapping Solution app is very popular. And there's also this OG guy on YouTube called Brad Yates. He has a giant library of tapping videos on just about any theme under the sun. So if you, for example, knew that you were going to tell your investor that actually you don't want to take this introduction to this person that they want to connect you to because you're really busy, but you don't want to piss them off and you're feeling all nervous and anxious about it, you could go and find a Brad Yates tapping for anxiety video and in like 10 minutes completely change your mood around it and be able to go and sit down and write that email.
So maybe we hinted toward this, but what really happens when we keep going strong and just carry on at work? We learn, especially in the corporate work culture, is disconnect emotionality from it. Just be as rational as you can be. And without realizing it, what we end up doing is basically disconnecting more and more from the body, from our ability, and by extension, from our ability to be present. And this being strong, being like unflappable because you have zero emotions in it is so revered in many corporate cultures. And it is something that many of us, I think, especially from my own experience and people I worked with, we have a pride in like not letting emotions impact our decision making or anything that's going on with us. So I'm curious what you would say to this and just this idea of having the emotions out of it and equating that with being strong.
So, firstly, this is, I just have to share, it just sparked immediately. Carol Dweck, the author of the book Mindset about growth versus fixed mindset, has been doing research lately into the role of the limbic system, aka more of like the emotional center of the brain, in decision making, and sort of refuting the idea that decisions are meant to be perfectly logical, right? Because we know that they're not. So I just referencing that because you said decision making as an example, and she's doing really interesting research for those curious. Um, but my counter argument to this is, firstly, I always like to clarify, like when I'm encouraging people to be with their emotions and to allow and to process these things, I'm not saying that you need to start crying on your team all hands meeting, right? Like you can do it in private. It doesn't have to be a scene, right? And I mean, there are times where showing emotion can be completely appropriate at work, but that's not de facto what I'm suggesting. I'm suggesting that it can be a private and a personal practice, like emotional hygiene. Repressing and ignoring emotions and just like keeping strong and staying in execution mode, and being stoic, um, that's how burnout happens. That's how micromanagers are made. That's how dictators are made. That's how people who um, might appear to have things under control actually terrorize themselves and others. Right? Like the person who is so on top of everything that they actually are breathing down their team's neck and micromanaging every little last piece of communication that goes out the door, right? They might seem like they're controlling things, but really what's running wild and dictating their behavior is probably some thread of fear that they have about, the company failing or them looking bad in their position, or who knows, right? There's something going on in them that's compelling them to behave in this uber controlling way and overfunction. And it's actually harming other people in the organization, right? It's usually having something of a malignant impact on yourself or others that you just might not see because it's in your blind spot.
Yes. I'm so glad you went there because this is, and as I have my puppy telling me it's his dinner time, which, yeah, you just have to give me 10 more minutes. Okay, but
He's like, I'll show you somatic. He bites your arm.
That's literally what he's biting my hand. But I'm glad you took it in this direction because this is connecting the dots between somatic work and broader change and why this is so important. So you're bringing up the way that when we are disconnected from our emotional experience, from our felt sense experience in the body, we can't help behaving in a way that causes further harm.
Totally.
It's just, it may sound dramatic to say it that way, but it's just the nature of being disconnected from reality. Is we behave from a place of patterning and we can't meet the needs that are there in our relationships in the most important places in our lives.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. If you're angry and resentful and like silently fuming over the fact that your team doesn't pull as much weight as you do, and you decide to double down and just run circles around them, all while like sort of passive aggressively, fuming at them, you're only hurting yourself, right? You're only hurting yourself. And so if you were to instead just to like look at that anger and allow that space to breathe and figure out the meaning in that message and see that really there's a deep need and desire to ask for more resources or ask for more support or pare back your workload. Well, once again, it comes back to just the holy grail of what we're doing here. You could feel better. You could feel a lot better. And there's really no pride in pushing yourself or overexerting yourself if it's going to drive you to self-destruction. What's the use?
This is what you were just speaking to. One of the reasons why I think it's really important to close here and to drive this point home is because people listening are going to be people who care about climate change, who care about what's going on within our governmental systems, who care about just their family healing some of the traumatic experiences that they've encountered that then lead to intergenerational trauma. And what we're talking about here is really the building block of addressing these broader systemic issues and at the very least, not perpetuating them without realizing it. And I would love to just hear your perspective on this, especially addressing people who are taking on or in leadership roles and want to be modeling a different version of leadership, whether we're directly working on climate solutions, whether we're directly working on healing intergenerational trauma. We all have the ability to be part of moving in an evolutionary direction, moving in a direction more aligned with love and connection. And I would love to hear the way that you might help people connect the dots who care so much about having a purpose that is supportive of positive change and impact in the world.
I might recommend the book My Grandmother's Hands on this topic. It's not about leadership per se, but it is about community healing and ancestral healing. And it underscores the importance of individual healing in that process, because healing the nervous system and becoming this present and relaxed person fundamentally changes your capabilities as a leader, and it will ensure that you have a positive impact on every single person around you. So it's like, what good is our big picture mission? And I've worked with people in the not-for-profit space that have dealt with some, let's say, unsavory behavior from leadership. And leadership actually created a lot of work trauma for the people immediately in their environment, while working towards a vision of doing good in the world, right? Out in the world, the campaign was this thing, but then right in the office, there were people who were suffering, right? In a fight or flight response every day because of leadership's behavior. That to me is completely antithetical to the idea of wanting to do good in the world. And so I think it's really twofold. I think it's that you can have an immediate positive impact on any given person in your path, which does good in the world, of course, through this work. But then I think it also, back to the point about creativity, frees you up to do bigger picture thinking and helps you to work through fatigue, fear, again, shutdown, resistance, blame, any of the stuff that comes up when you're fighting the good fight, right? It's an emotional thing. So we have to be equipped to process the emotions that come up, and coming up against all of the hardness in the world and the difficulties in the world, right? So that we can continue to do so, and do so in the most effective way, right? To me, it's essential. It's not even a question. And I think it could be a question because it might feel like it's somewhat navel gazing or selfish to be focused on your feelings. Wow, poor me. But it's not that. It's not that at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's in so doing, in deepening within our own humanity, that we expand our capacity to share that humanity, to bring that humanity to the world.
Yeah, totally. My Grandmother's Hands is such a beautiful book for this.
Thank you. Rachel, where can people find you, connect with you, learn with you and from you? How can they?
They can hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm fairly active on there, Rachel Hamlin. I know it will be in the show notes. I have a weekly email newsletter that I write. People have said my emails are short and useful and that you actually want to read them. Hooray. And lastly, I'm on Instagram. I don't really use it for my work very much anymore, but if you want to connect with me on a personal level, I share life in Costa Rica and in my travels on there. And I'm always happy to see new faces on Instagram as well at @rhamlin.
Beautiful. Rachel, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for continuing to share what's possible when we feel what's really in there and how we can do it and how it's actually right there, accessible for all of us. And it is modeling something really new, really different, and really powerful. So thank you for being an example of that.
And thank you for exactly the same. Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to jam with you today.